Можемо починати.
Доброго дня.
Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues. May I welcome all of you to our event, a public discussion dedicated to the topic European Donbass, how to communicate European integration in Donbass, in Donetsk and Luhansk areas. This is kind of our joint effort with Fredrik, who actually this organization supported our event and company seat in the New Europe Center, which is represented by Kateryna Zarembo. I would like to thank everybody who came here, and made their physical appearance here, and all those who follow us in online. I would like to emphasize that we have two working languages, Ukrainian and English. You can hear us in the respective language, or the Ukrainian language or English language, in our web page of the UCMC and Fredrik Ukraine and the Center New Europe. So please provide your comments to our web page of the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. And I would like to give the floor to Mr. Fredrik, the director of the Fredrik Ebert Center in Ukraine. You have the floor, sir.
Дякую дуже, Kateryna.
Thank you very much, Kateryna.
Distinguished guests and speakers. Thanks first and foremost to the New Europe Center and Kateryna Zarembo in particular and in personal for the idea, the effort, and the very exciting and interesting study that we are going to see today. When it comes to discussing European integration in all its aspects, Donetsk and Luhansk regions have always been different, so to say. Lower public support for European integration and high skepticism have been predominating for many years. And of course, we must mention the war and the de facto unnatural split of the region since 2014, with the eastern parts being under occupation. The most difficult part, however, is to discuss European integration to be a unifying thing rather than controversial. What does being a European mean for people in the Donbass, and how have attitudes towards the EU changed since 2014? This study seeks to answer these questions. To warm you up, I would like to quote some of the statements made in the focus groups. Nikita, 21 years old, Mariupol. Our authorities' approach lacks consistency. In our condition, we are not up to the EU membership, their standards. If we open the market, they will devour us. Our economy is not adapted to European competition. In Donbass, people find it more convenient to keep what they have now, even if it's not very good. Olena, 38 years old, Konstantinivka. In Europe, if people go on strike, the leadership reacts. They respect human rights. And in our country, no one will react, no matter if you strike or not. We are not considered human. They make money of us. And there, they let people earn money. And about medicine, people in Europe have insurance and are treated there. They don't come to us for that, and we collect money to be treated in Europe. Mykola, 64 years, Pokrovsk. Geographically, we are in Europe, but mentally, we are far away from Europe. But we need to strive to get there. Where else? We would not go to Asia or China, would we? We need to break the mentality in our heads and go to Europe. Sergei, 31 years old, Pokrovsk. Here are the people who continue to adhere to pro-Russian views and are afraid to express them. Tamara, 68 years, Konstantinivka. I do not consider myself a European because pensioners in Europe do not live like we do in Ukraine. Alyona, 44, Bakhmut. I do not consider myself a European. There are significant differences in mentality and the level of well-being. Mikhailo, senior man, Mariupol. There's a risk that Europe may try to settle its issues with Russia at our expense. Sergei, 31 years, Pokrovsk. It is easier to do business in Europe. They have fair courts. Europe is an example of what we want in Ukraine. You hear the statements already show some controversy. However, these focus groups allowed us to get a better picture. Findings of a survey of SCORE Ukraine from 2019 gave an additional very valuable input, and a series of interviews with activists, entrepreneurs, and opinion leaders, both in Donetsk and Luhansk, contributed as well to get a full picture. The study is structured in such a manner that qualitative data of focus groups and interviews are supplemented and sometimes contrasted with qualitative survey data to identify both mainstream trends and micro trends. The study is also a follow-up to regional research on European integration by the New Europe Center and the 2017 study of the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung in Ukraine together with the Aghajanyan Institute on Ukrainian society and European values. So here we go with the numbers and with the findings. Have a good discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marcel. Thank you very much for also disclosing as our methodology. Indeed, this is a study which is composed from the three sets of data which Marcel mentioned, so the focus groups, the sociological quantitative data provided by SCORE Ukraine, and the individual interviews. And today we have speakers of both the people who worked on the report or contributed to the report in various ways, including from Druzhkivka and Severodonetsk. So we have them via Zoom also present virtually with us. I will start with saying that I
have to switch to Ukrainian. Sorry to do that. I continued the language Marcel was speaking. There are two methodological maybe reservations which our followers can say, speaking about the terminology. When we are talking about Donbass, I accept that this term does not reflect in full measure the let's say all the eastern regions of Donetsk and Luhansk area. It somewhat constricts that. But we use in our report this term just to territorially indicate the Donetsk and Luhansk area. We, as representatives of the New Europe Center, we have to say that those are two different regions if we are talking about the introduction of reforms in that area. Quite recently, we introduced the Euro map. This is the second research of ours, second study. In our note, European Donbass, we provide in our table a kind of comparative rating. You can see, if you have this booklet, you can see that now or after the presentation, we compare Donetsk and Lugansk area based on the number of different indicators like integration level, healthcare, etc., etc. And you'll see they are absolutely different regions if we are taking account all those spheres I mentioned before. But again, European integration, if you're talking about that per se, there are also differences between the two areas. Also, I would like to address my words to those who have skepticism. Why we should actually take care of the European integration, because this is a special region. But we did not approach that issue from that position. We know that this region is in the state of permanent transformation since the year 2014. Which can maybe accounted for the Russian aggression, and a number of other factors which were kind of consequences of all that happening. But all those stereotype impressions of the region, are they really valid or true or not? Well, actually, so not the black and white picture. Valeriy Kravchenko is going to talk about that in more details. What we were amazed at there, which we did not expect even. Some of our discoveries, which we would like actually to share with you. And now, at this point of time, I'm going to turn the mic to our speakers. First of all, the European Union, as an embodiment of Europe in the East, they perceive that as absolutely identical terms. It has some strengths in Donbass, even those who are against European integration or our accession to the European Union. So we talking about 4 models of European Union for Ukraine, which we managed to outline and select some focus groups. One of those are one negative, European Union is a threat. Remaining three are kind of neutral or positive. European Union as a model, as an example to follow, you have to learn from that, so we can talk about some positive comparison of European Union and Ukraine, where Ukraine actually loses to European Union, even about those who doesn't want to join the European Union. Another conclusion of ours we arrived at, and there I'm talking about something new which we have not seen before in sociological questionnaires or polling, that Eurasian Economic Union or any other union with these former Soviet Union republics is not an exclusive notion, and Oksana Lemishka is going to talk more about that. But so far, actually, when we ordered some of the polling, we found out that there are some of those who are for European Union, or some European Union with the former Soviet Union republics, but there are a third group which should try to avoid the polling questionnaire. Now we see even group number 4. We managed to reveal that based on the set of different methods. We can see another group, not a numerous group, but it still exists, which doesn't support any of those unions. Oksana will explain why it can be in this way. And the last thing, last conclusion is as follows, that in the East, in my opinion, we can see a unique phenomenon of development of the civil society, and we've been doing for many years the monitoring of the development of the civil society. And I believe that it has never been the case in Ukraine since 2014, for the majority organizations, movements, and activists. European integration is not the major topic of their activity. If we say we talk about Euro integration, not the kind of let's say conglomeration or whatever can be revealed or manifest itself, but if you are talking about the issues of interaction between citizens and the state, of course this is the European agenda, European values, which we visualize when you are talking about different focus groups, infrastructure, and not just abstract values like democracy or human rights. And this I'm going to stop since we are pressing time. That's why I would like to turn the mic to Valeriy Kravchenko. First of all, I would like to congratulate you with the 15th anniversary of the Center of International Security, which started its activity in Donetsk. But Valeriy actually is the IDP, and he was forced to leave Donetsk in 2014. He was member of the team which worked with the focus group. Please tell us what was maybe most unexpected for you. And I would appreciate if you can tell you about this kind of break in 2014, 2016. Thank you, Kateryna, first of all. I would like to congratulate you with your study, your research. I know that you've been preparing that for a long time. Thank you for your help. Actually, this is very, very urgent, very topical theme. And as you mentioned already, I'm Euro-Atlantist, so to say. But there are certain experience I had while living and working in Donetsk, and after that it was a very interesting one, and we tried to base our research on that material, and which led to the result we obtained later. So I believe that this study is very applicable. It has an applied nature. We have to disseminate it at the level of the civil and military administrations and the local authorities. We can talk about that in the context of the forthcoming elections, because the information about European Union, we still lack that information. Even given the fact that we have a 6-year-long warfare here, and we developed our relations with the European Union and NATO, but we do not feel it really, so we have to do that. If we are talking about the window, which must be kind of a show window, in Donbass, there is no show window yet, but we are on the right tracks and unification of our efforts, and there were a lot of efforts during this time. But of course, we have to strengthen further on this communication. I'll start with the general things. My first impression, okay, immediately, I would like to immediately say that those are my personal thoughts. I do not claim that I'm going to share an objective picture, but I'm going to talk what I saw as new and what I had seen before. There is no such region as Donbass. And for me, I wear Shakhtar Donetsk in honor of yesterday's victory of Shakhtar Donetsk, the soccer team from Donetsk, over Real Madrid. On the one hand, it's a pleasure. On the other hand, not. Why it's my pleasure? Because I grew in Donbass and I actually was fed on this. Maybe just sucked it in with mother's milk, But somebody on the occupied territory, they try to experience what I experienced in my childhood, but it's already was a very tangible part of the Russian taste, so to say. But if you're talking about the occupied part of the Donbass, it's very difficult to feel Donbass as it used to be before. It's kind of changed. What you can see in Mariupol, you won't see in Pokrovsk or let's say Starobisk. Starobisk is not Donbass area city, but it's a Slobozhanщina area, closer to Kharkov. But it was very much dependent on industry, mines, plants, agrarian sector, metallurgical works, etc., steelworks. Now this integration should be seen in the cross-section of good governance on the local level. If there are some mayors who work or local authorities do something, the indicators of European integration, their perception would be the highest. It's not even associated with the European integration per se. This is kind of a priori thing. This is a kind of fragmentation. This fragmentation exists there, Number two, the people in Donbass, they have a kind of collective conscience. And this is historical thing, Donbass, this is the land of collectives, mines, industrial factories. This is maybe on the identity at the level of genome, and the collective conscience goes hand in hand with the collective lack of responsibility. They are not prepared using their own initiative. Those who are ready to use that, they sometimes appear, but we cannot talk about the mass-scale phenomenon of this kind. We cannot even talk about that. And the initiatives, for example, in the western central Ukraine, you will see more of that in the local population in those areas, those who would like to work and further develop their businesses and be kind of self-employed, etc. This collective identity so far prevails there. And by the way, when we are talking about communication, I would like to immediately say that this idea to work with multiplicators, for example, the deputy principal in the school or the head of the condominium societies or the foreman, they have the authority. The higher people on the higher level, they do not have that authority. And those who we can actually convey our messages, this is the medium level. And maybe we can communicate most efficiently even with this level of medium level. They have an acute level of justice or lack of justice. And now they feel this lack of justice. They shut down the minds. They work hard in the mind, and we have to understand how hard this labor is. They did not pay their salaries and wages in due time. We are talking about the territory controlled by our government. And if we are talking about the miners cities, or not only miners, for example, Severodonetsk, where this is the Azot enterprise was dealing with nitrogen, so to say, and they work hard and they're not paid properly or timely, and this really affects them badly from the point of view of morale. And again, and those people I mentioned before, they had the responsibility from the point of view of the collective, and they used to get a remuneration for their labor from the state, from the government. If they are not paid, then the government or the state is guilty, and this tells strongly on the electorate. They believe in stability, and they expect that stability from the party which is the helm of the governance. If not, they lose their belief in that, and that's why other parties have a high rating in the localities. And again, if the power will tell them that we have to access NATO, they will do that. They will not think long whether NATO is good or bad. So they have kind of conformist mentality, and they follow the course the other people indicate them to follow. They have the kind of PTSR syndrome, post-traumatic syndrome, war. And very often in those places where we received very skeptical results, for example, Konstantinovka, they feel, they say the betrayal, not really the state or not non-efficiency of the local authorities. This is a kind of notorious in Konstantinovka. All the factories which were operative in the Soviet times, they have been shut down, etc., etc. So truly, the people there, they have this kind of vision, and this feeling of being betrayed, it's there. Speaking about Russia, many people mentioned that, and we heard in many places that the war in Ukraine, this is a civil war. And the situation we have, the Ukraine, the blame should be placed at the door of Ukraine. Ukraine is guilty. This is in the majority of focus groups we studied. But if if this rhetoric was voiced, the people sitting in that audience actually joined in that rhetoric. Why Russia? A lot of relatives and relations, close relations with the relatives in Russia. Many people came from Russia to Ukraine, and vice versa. Many people who used to live in Ukraine went to Russia. So this is one explanation. Another explanation is the sympathy to some totalitarian leaders. And if you ask who is the most popular politician in other country, in Donbass, they would say Lukashenko. They would be unanimous. They in the focus group they said that Lukashenko was a model, whatever. And a few more things. Number one, this is this rupture between the generation, which we saw. The youth would like to advance further on. Unfortunately, the young people would like to leave that region because that region that does not allow them to realize them, to show their worth, so to say, to realize their potential, and they, of course, do not meet with their support on the part of their parents, who would like to stay where they are now. Another thing. Which is associated with different generations, and actually the discovery we made from the point of view of communication, European integration. Not lost category are pensioners. The pensioners could be communicators of European integration. Honestly speaking, again, this is a subjective opinion. And the lost generation is the people of 45, 55 bracket of age who were young in the 19th last century. Maybe not their youth, but their productive age. And the pensioners who are now pensioners, those who were active in the late 80s, 1980s, who still have preserve some idealistic, let's say, feelings, and they lived through the 1990s, so we can communicate through them because their grandchildren heed to them, and we could see this example in many regions. And again, coming back to my pensioners, a kind of funny story. We should inform more the pensioners. In many cases, we could see, for example, the assistance given by European Union, they actually help them to change the windows, or let's say they have a very small plug on some of the plugs on some of the buildings. That this building was built with the help of the European Union, but the pensioners could not read this small font, and maybe they should provide them some kind of free consultation of ophthalmologists or eye surgeons, let's say opticians, and this could be this kind of practical joke. No, not practical joke, but every joke can find some serious things as well. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Valeriy. I believe we can actually add some of the recommendations which you shared with us. Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to Oksana Lemishka, who represents the world of democratic development, and thank you very much for the data provided with us, unpublished before. The center gives such a project which is called SCORE. They have a special website, SCORE Ukraine. You'll see a lot of unique data there, and part of those have been never published, and they provided this data specifically for us for our study. So I would like to give the floor to Oksana for her to tell about the maps they use in their studies, in their research, what kind of information they provide, and what is the attitude towards European mood in Donbass.
Thank you very much for this invitation. I'm really glad as a researcher that we start to look deeper and we are able to see the picture with more complexities. Not only whether you support or do not support the EU. At 2 a.m. we started to speak about all this with Kateryna, and you may speak a lot about Euro integration at night. It is a great topic. I've prepared several words about how to read this map and how to read our report. And also I would like to tell you about some focus groups Valeriy mentioned. This is really important for our understanding about what we did. SCORE is a survey in Ukraine. Last year, we surveyed Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts, 9,000 respondents. You may read about methodology on the site. We have references in our materials. First question that was used in this survey, whether you consider yourself a European. And in SCORE methodology, there were two questions speaking about your identity, who you are, Russian, Ukrainian, citizen of Ukraine, European, and so on and so forth. Second question, whether you consider yourself European, whether you feel that you're European, score from 0 to 10. So this is not 100%, this is an index. 0 is absence of phenomenon in the society, and 10 is presence of this phenomenon. When we ask about identity, average score in Donetsk and Luhansk Oblast is about 0.2. Not many people say that they are Europeans as their identity, but when they are asked about how they feel, whether they feel European, the score rises to 2.2s and sometimes to 3.1, like in Kramatorsk. And in our company, we also asked ourselves, and we believe that focus groups provide understanding about this figure 3. When we are speaking about identity, the index is low. In many focus groups, they said that we cannot reach European mentality, or I am a European, but my surrounding is not, or I am a European, and we are moving to that side, but the power betrays us. Local or central power doesn't listen to us. And score 3 is a positive movement. We want, we have aspirations, but we are self-criticizing and we see that where to grow. And this is of help to sociologists. So in our map, you may see that people, they do not reject this identity. There is a healthy approach to what it means to be European. And in our publication, it is described, those associations, what it means to be European. Next slide. We asked our respondents about their attitude about joining EU 4.3, Euro-Asian Union 4.8, big difference among cities. This is about communication and about local power in these towns. And also we have one more survey. We will publish it together with our colleagues. Whether we have those respondents who support the European Union and the Euro-Asian Union. And we have such people that support both. This is an evident fact that there are people who hesitate. We looked at this mathematically. You have the scheme in the publication, and I would like to draw your attention to column 3. These are those citizens who are for EU, and for Euro-Asian Union, about 10%. Here we see movement of support starting 2018 to 2019. So there are two main messages I would like to outline here. First, support of the unions. This is not stable. In sociology, they believe that political thoughts change slowly from liberal to other views. So these are slow changes, they believe. Support of EU and Euro-Asian Union, these changes depend on environment. So we need proper communication. And we have citizens who support both unions. We studied these issues deeper. We do not have it in this publication, but in other publications of SCORE, we see that there are people who have connections, family connections with Russia, and but they believe our government and they aspire for European future for our country. So this is a complex approach to political ideas, and we should not simplify it and ask people to choose one or another. So we have historical relations with Russia, there is family, and people believe that maybe they should have the course they got used to. So we will continue with such research, and we will study our focus groups to know them better. This is about our survey. When I was invited to this discussion, when I was asked how to communicate to European Union and Euro integration in the east of Ukraine, I provided a short answer. I even laughed then. To communicate, I said. The first step, we need one centralized source with simple explanations what the European Union is and what benefit or what harm it may provide to the regions. And the people are afraid to speak about negative sides. But this is the only way to get support for European integration by the citizens. So, you know, when we are speaking about support to Euro integration and we speak about benefits, in our focus groups we see that many people believe that mines will get closed, and individuals won't get any benefits at all. And we have fears, and that's why people want to consider other opportunities and other unions. Three advice. We lack first communication, simple communication. Valeriy mentioned about it. We should have proper people who are able to communicate properly, and we should understand the stages we are in, what should we do next. So there should be one proper source for communication. Second, we should not be afraid to speak about difficult topics. So for me, one dialogue was especially interesting among respondents. There was Olga. She was really brave. She said that we should go back to the Russian Federation. It is historically right and it is better. But Oksana said we have war, and other speakers said nothing good came out of there anyway. So this was like a social therapy. We should not be afraid to speak about difficult things. People should be able to speak about their fears, and only through this healthy dialogue in every oblast, not only in Donetsk and Luhansk, we will be able to understand together where we are going to move. And the last thing I wanted to say, you know, there was such a Zunzi, military man, renowned military man from China. He said that those who fight for values, they win wars. So those people who are in the East, who are in these military actions, they are speaking about values, and they provide new life and new interpretation to the European Union that now undergoes this difficult period of time. And we have this bravery, this courage. It is in our territory, and we hope to share it, and we are waiting for other publications. So I would like to comment on the graphs that are on the screen. We have it in our publication. We may look at it from each side. So this is for EU, for Eurasian Union, for against both or for both. And the movement of support is it goes through every group from one pole to another. So this is a unique trend that shows that this public opinion, as Oksana said, it is not stable, and it can be changed, and communication is able to change this opinion. So we have questions from Mr. Kulak, and please communicate with us, and we get all your questions about identity, and what identity is the prevalent one? What is the most popular? On the whole, Ukrainian or citizen of Ukraine is the most popular identity. On the site score for peace.org, we have all 202 maps, and you may look through all the indicators, and the main popular identity is Ukrainian identity. At the moment, I would like to give the floor to Fredrik Weslau, Deputy Head Consultative Mission of EU in Ukraine. Now we go to security component, and this is really important for the residents of the East. Consultative mission started its work starting 2014 and broadens its activity. Last month they opened office Mariupol. Mr. Weslau, please tell us about perception of security and the provision of security in the region, and the role of EU and your cooperation with the residents in the East.
Thank you very much, Kateryna. Thank you for inviting me to this event. And really, let me commend you and the authors on this excellent report. I think, from our perspective, it's extremely timely and very, very insightful. So thank you very much for that. I think the topic of this event is very close to my heart. And I mean, the reason it is very much because, like you mentioned, EUAM opened a field office in Mariupol only a month ago. We've been active in that region for about a year, but 1 month ago we opened this field office. So I think this is sort of testament in a sense to our engagement and the EU's overall engagement to stepping up in the region. But let me maybe start by saying a couple of words about the EU advisory mission and what we do and how we work. So we are one part of the EU's overall support to Ukraine, to reform in Ukraine. And we are a crisis management mission. Our mandate is to support the reform of the civilian security sector. So we advise Ukrainian interlocutors on how to reform this very important sector. We provide strategic advice, which means we work on legislation, we work on strategies, ministerial strategies, and so on. And we also provide training and equipment and more sort of hands-on support. Our ultimate goal is really to reform the sector and to make it more efficient, more accountable, and a sector that really enjoys the trust of the citizens of Ukraine, which I think is extremely important. And we work with the police, with the Ministry of Internal Affairs, State Border Guard Service, prosecution, security service, and so on. And very importantly, also with civil society, which is one of our key interlocutors in this. I think it's important to note that even though we're in Mariupol, we don't work directly on the conflict. This is not part of our mandate, but I think through our reform efforts, we strengthen the resilience of Ukraine and in that way sort of contribute to overall peacemaking. We have, besides the new office in Mariupol, we have 3 other offices in Ukraine, in Odessa, in Lviv, and in Kharkiv. So we really cover, north, east, south, and west of the country. And I think this is also extremely important, especially when it comes to working on reform, that the EU is not only focused on Kiev, that we're actually out in the regions. And there I agree that the communication side of this becomes extremely important, that, we're in the regions really explaining what we do, who we are, first of all, but what we do, and also how the reform efforts actually benefit people in a very direct way. I think this is absolutely essential. Let me touch upon 2 takeaways from your report, which I found to be particularly interesting. I think, first of all, I think the report really shows that the people you spoke to in Donetsk take a very sort of pragmatic approach to EU integration, actually. They don't care so much about the EU label, but they care more about what reform actually does to improve their life, the benefits of this reform. And to me personally, I think this is how it should be. This is really sort of how it should be, because reform is ultimately all about this. It's about improving the lives of all Ukrainians. In the civilian security sector, this is about, having a police force that you can trust. In the courts, this is about, feeling assured that you, can trust the judges, you can trust the prosecution, that you will receive a fair and impartial trial if you end up in court. This is about being certain that, you don't have to pay a bribe in order to receive, a service which should be a normal service that everybody in Ukraine is entitled to. And I think this is really what reform is all about at the end of the day. The way that EUAM works is that our vision is obviously very grounded in European values, such as rule of law, respect for fundamental freedoms, transparency, and accountability. And at the same time, I think our approach is very much a down-to-earth approach. This is about being physically present out in the regions, like I said. It's about projects that benefit people's lives very directly. And it's also about improvement in areas that matter most for people, because these are the best ways to really, also communicate what EUAM is actually doing. I think it's worth noting that our new office in Mariupol is a big office. We have more than 20 staff there, internationals and Ukrainians. We have EU experts who work on everything from public order, from community policing, from prosecution reform, from good governance, anti-corruption, and also very much focus on civil society. And this also brings me to the second takeaway, and I think this is really the boom of civic engagement in the region. I think you call it the boom in your report. I mean, civic participation means more frequent and structured interaction between the citizen and the state. And this in turn leads to increased understanding and public trust towards state bodies. As I mentioned, EUEM, we endeavor to very much connect civil society and law enforcement agencies through dialogue and through sort of workshops and through this sort of trust building in a sense. And we have a program in our field offices, including the one in Mariupol, that we call community safety strategies. And these strategies are exactly that. They bring together all law enforcement agencies to improve coordination among them, but also to link up with civil society in order to increase this sort of dialogue with the ultimate aim of increasing trust as well. Because if you can increase the dialogue, you can enable the law enforcement agencies to really address the concerns of people. What matters to people? What are their fears? What are their concerns? What are their needs when it comes to safety and security? As I also think you rightly point out in the report, CSOs are really the embodiment of European values such as democracy and respect for human rights. When civil society is active and vibrant, as I think in general civil society is in Ukraine, in many ways the EU is already present in a way, regardless of formal membership. But also having said this, I think the citizens of the region already now associate with the EU primarily through wanting stronger rule of law, wanting equality, wanting freedom. And I think this shows as well that the EU's very concrete support and presence may eventually change people's mindset and sort of intellectually move them somehow closer to the EU. And here, European aspirations, it's a process, but one that I think is coming gradually closer and closer. So on this, let me just conclude by very much agreeing with you about this question of communication on the EU side. I think this is something which, we need to do better, and mea culpa, absolutely, as somebody who works for the EU. We often end up in much too sort of bureaucratic explanations about the inner workings of the EU, rather than how what we actually do benefits people. I mean, during a 5-year period after 2014, the EU has contributed 15 billion euros to Ukraine, which is a massive amount of money. But we need to become better at explaining how this actually, translates into benefits for, Olga and Sergei, the people who you actually spoke to in your report. So let me end it at that. Thank you very much.
Дуже дякую, Фредрік, і ви абсолютно правильно зазначили.
Thank you, Fredrik. You absolutely aptly mentioned that the civilian aspect of security is very important, a key sphere. I would like to quote give you a quotation, that people are afraid of speak up their minds because there will be big impact on the, let's say, on the security service, and they actually afraid to say something wrong, with respect of whether we are talking how the security service can or cannot influence something, but this is a kind of the reservation. It's something we have to talk about the sector to which we must increase the trust of the local citizens. So thank you very much for your work in the east of our country. At this point of time, I would like to give the floor to Ivetta Delicatna, who is a leading expert on communications in the Association for You. And does a lot for in this sphere. When actually I always follow what is your comments, which you send in by phone. So please continue your work. Ivetta, thank you very much for your participation, and here you have the floor.
Actually, we were involved into understanding how your integration communicated since 2014. And beyond current tactical researches, we also looked at Eastern neighborhood research about perception of Euro-integration and all the studies which are done by other organizations during the years. And actually, what is interesting is that perception of Euro-integration by eastern part of Ukraine doesn't really differ from the perception from the south of Ukraine and even from western part. And in June, we did 3 focus groups in Lviv, Odessa, and Kharkiv. And actually, there were the same results as we see it from eastern parts. And what was really very surprising, what Kateryna, you mentioned, is that even when we show to Lviv group the message that Euro-integration is the way of going further from Russia, they say, oh no, let's not be that strict, we should be quite diplomatic to that. And it was really big surprise for us that even in Western region, people still would like to be kind of diplomatic and tolerant to our Eastern neighbor. And what was also surprising is that people doesn't want to be taught and told that your integration is something which is far away, and they want to be proud of Ukraine, and they don't to be guided, I would say. And this makes in front of us, that put in front of us quite a big challenges to plan the communication campaign, because then it brings us to the much bigger question: what is your integration for the country and for the state? What is the function of your integration? What is the place of your integration among state priorities? Either this is the final goal, entering EU, or after entering EU, what happens next? And for example, when it was a communication campaign of entering EU in Poland, they said that your integration is just a tool of coming Poland back to European family. So the end destination was Poland to be the equal part of Western Europe. And entering EU was just an instrument and the tool of doing that. In our case, in Ukraine, we don't have an answer to this question. What is your integration for Ukrainians? No, nobody actually even, I didn't see and watch any national discussion about this point. What is your integration for Ukraine? And actually, ideally, any communication expert will tell you that before planning communication campaign, it should be some kind of final goal, what we should tell to people, what your integration gives to Ukraine as a country. And nobody can answer this question at no one level, not the country nor European delegation, because this is the state, this is the, I don't know, Ministry of Culture, this is the administration, the president who should initiate such discussion. It should be politicians, I don't know, humanitarian policy of the country which reflects this discussion, etc. But nevertheless, not having this final goal, we still should communicate Euro integration, and you all were right mentioning that people won't understand difficult, complicated messages about values, etc. That's why we plan the campaign which Association for You will help to Ukrainian government to launch to 3 big parts. And again, before explaining to person what is Euro integration and what it gives him personally, we first should explain what is European Union, because you are right, there is no one single communication resource where anyone can, in simple language, find information about Euro integration. And for example, when we studied how topic of European integration or European Union is taught in Ukrainian schools, is also very bad situation, because it's taught only in 3 subjects, in 5th, 9th, and 10th form, in very short parts, and the teachers say that they don't have a resource where they can get the content for their lessons about Euro integration, and this is very bad. What we can expect from other people, if even at the level of education system, it's not taught right. And that's why, again, coming back to the communication tasks, we first should explain what is European Union and what are European values. Because again, when you enter any discussion about European Union, what you hear is that You don't share European values. How you can expect entering European Union? That's why the second big task is to explain European values, what they are. And then to explain what is Euro integration and how it's connected with the reform. Because another big issue is that Euro integration is a separate part and reforms is a separate part. And people do not connect these two directions in their heads. They think that the tram, which is bought for European money, is the mayor who did it for them, but not the European Union. And they do not connect these reforms with Euro integration. That's why another communication task is to connect the reforms and Euro integration. So the communication campaign, which government is launching this month in November, will consist of 3 stages, 3 series. First, explanation, what is Euro integration? 3 main arguments: legal approximation, sharing the values, and entering a European market. 3 main arguments. Second part is what are European values, and you can see it on the posters. We try to explain it through very simple examples. You have the rampa at the tram. This is equality, right? You have a good education environment in the school. This is dignity. And the third part of the campaign is explaining particular benefits which people get from Euro integration, right? This is the new tram. This is Euro integration. This is the law about new telecom services. This is Euro integration. So this campaign will start in November. Unfortunately, nor government nor Association for You doesn't have big resources to communicate that. And I saw in your report the recommendation of aggressive communication. I like it very much. I like this phrase. This is just exclamation mark. I'd love to. Euro integration will be in every corner, on every TV screen, on every radio point, but unfortunately this is the huge resource. It's very expensive and nobody has this resource, not the government nor European Union, and this is the big issue. Who is responsible, where is the resource, and what is the final destination?
Дуже дякую. Я попросила би, Валерій, якщо можна, ми залишимо коментар на...
Thank you very much. If I can, Valeriy, we will have 5 more minutes for comments and remarks. There was a comment that we should not change the language. There are streams in Ukrainian, stream in English, and you have to follow that. I would like to appreciate all those who were in Zoom with us, online. Now I would like to turn the mic to Svitlana Aghajanyan. She represents different public organizations, NGOs. Now she represents the Точку доступа, point of access from Druzhkivka. Thank you very much for the opportunity given to me to communicate with you and to talk, to share my vision and vision for my colleagues from different organizations. I do agree that there was a boom of activity in the NGOs and people who would like to have changes and transformations, who make those transformations visible. And over the last 5 years in different news of the Donetsk and Luhansk region, more and more people appear of this kind, But if you're talking about the Euro integration process and changes communication, I would like to draw attention to another aspect.
Often people from Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts, they didn't visit European countries, and they have only overall impression about life there, and they do not know about that way of reforms, of changes that happened in Europe long before. And this information about processes in Europe concerning reform, they should be properly communicated. There should be mutual responsibility of people and business and power for these topics. And we as civil society activists, we work with projects, we carry out surveys, and we see such understanding of people. People want that someone comes and does everything for them. It looks like this, that the perception of European Union joining EU is also perceived like this, that someone should come and do everything for us. For example, like in Germany, the pension should be at the same level. Comfortable conditions of life should be provided by someone. So this is first thing I wanted to say. And secondly, I noted the message about self-sufficiency. This is really important aspect. Last year, I visited Germany, then I also visited Poland and Ukraine and Donetsk and Luhansk Oblast. Here we have something to share our experience, and we should not devalue ourselves. We should not believe that in Europe they have exemplary life. And we have good examples here. We should build cooperation. We should increase the level of mutual trust. So in our region, in our community, in Druzhkivka, we lack trust between people and power, and there is a lack of trust to local power. And this trust should be built. We should cooperate for this. We should have negotiations and we should coordinate our activity. We should be involved in the process. So changes are ongoing and people get better understanding, and they should not only require some services in different sectors, including security sector. This is really important. We are the participants of the security working group. We have dialogues with the citizens, and gradually people improve their understanding that security, social cohesion, it all needs their personal responsibility. They should not only order service from police, from emergency service and healthcare. They should cooperate. They should help to form agenda and help to implement the goals. This is what I wanted to say. This is the main that I wanted to voice. Thank you, Svitlana. I would like to give the floor to Inna Semenenko. She is head of the Department of Economy and Entrepreneurship, South Ukrainian National University, named after Volodymyr Dahl, Severodonetsk. Welcome. Question to you. European integration, science and education. We spoke with you before about some obstacles concerning education and your integration. Thank you for noting this aspect, this understanding of our achievements. We couldn't agree more. And what is your experience in your regional university and your participation in European scientific and educational processes? First of all, thank you for this invitation. Interesting speeches of experts. We've met with these experts, we know them, and together with Svitlana Aghajanyan, 2 or 3 years ago, we presented indexes of score concerning public activism and social cohesion in one of the communities of the Donetsk Oblast. About our university, when we are speaking about our university, this is not just educational and scientific institution. Now, universities in the eastern Ukraine play big social role. The universities, they are the centers of social life. They bring information about integration processes for students and for population on the whole. Valeriy mentioned post-traumatic syndrome, and we are IDP University, and many professors, they had some post-traumatic stress that cannot be separated from this conflict. Many people who work at this university together with the students, they are active citizens and members of social organizations, and they provide communication about European integration, not only through research, but through their personal activities and achievements. The universities differ from other institutions, organizations. We are trying to be outside politics, and in 2004 and later, during elections, no one campaigned for candidates. Students identified themselves what way they choose. And many people still support pro-Russian direction and parties. And elections that we will have in the nearest future, there will be so-called heavy battles concerning this. And in this research, it is said that after 2014, there was an outburst of public activism, and in the universities of the region, we had this as well. And we have two parts. One part is still in Lugansk, and another part went to Severodonetsk. And people went not only due to political reasons. And Oksana mentioned during her speech that people continued to communicate. Many family members are still there, and they do not have opportunity to go out from there. My colleagues who came here, they are really active. After relocation, we held many events. And this is not directly about Euro integration, but I would say that they are promoters of cooperation between the citizens and the state. And the main that we should understand is that any culture, we should communicate it, popularize it, but we should not force it on anyone. About challenges in the academic community, I believe that the main is lack of knowledge concerning foreign languages, and this influences opportunity to study foreign research and to carry out their own research. Average age of professors, I'm not an ageist, but facts speak for themselves. And in Lugansk and Donetsk Oblast, this indicator was rather high. And also in academia and academic community, we often may see, sometimes we may see some we may see different ideas. And students, they have their own views, and we should start communication not from university. We should start communication from schools or even kindergartens, because students, they have their own opinion, their own views. It is difficult to influence this opinion of you. Sometimes there is lack of European values. We believe that there are general human values. Everyone values love or friendship, but when we are speaking about European values, we are speaking about tolerance, protection, supremacy of law, openness, transparency. This is about all institutions, including academic institutions. But not all bad. We have better situation now than 10 years ago. As Valeriy said, we have many active young people. Changes are ongoing, sometimes slowly, but sometimes really quickly. There are several directions. I discussed with my colleagues. First, that I've mentioned, we should communicate European integration to popularize it, but we should not force it on people. And as Svitlana Aghajanyan mentioned, it is better to see once than to speak about it a lot. So there should be visits, webinars. These are really important. Last year, one student came to us. I know that he is studying in the Free University of Berlin. He lived in hostel together with our students, and they participated in a festival. Many people participated in it, including disabled people. And for our students, this was a wonderful experience to share information and hear about life in foreign universities. It is important to integrate separate elements of European life in different courses. We should speak about European Union, about we should speak about integration of separate values, those competences we teach to our students. We should teach them to negotiate, to be tolerant, to study, to train themselves. And we have big experience in this, but we need contacts, we need facilitators, those who will support these contacts between scientists, students from Ukraine and from abroad. We need opinion leaders because we need such people, and we have such a wonderful experience. Please sum up. At the end, I would like to say words of Taras Shevchenko. You should learn from others, and you should also popularize your own culture and ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Irina and Svitlana, for your being involved in our discussion from far away from here. I can say that actually we voiced all the questions you sent in. Maybe not all of you managed or had enough time to answer questions. If this is the case, we are prepared to continue our discussion. Our note is a discussable note. It will be available at the Fredrik Hebert website and the webpage respective, and those who actually signed in, they will receive those in your mailboxes. In conclusion, I would like to say that it was a deliberate step on our part to specifically have it at this date, just on the eve of the local elections. If you're talking about the Donetsk and Luhansk areas, I put it this way: if some kind of political struggle or fight that was not the case, if there, well, it really depends upon the constituencies, on different election districts, or whatever. In some cities and townships, there is a very acute competition for being elected, and actually the people are active, as what has not been the case for the last 5-6 years. If there is some vision that the opposition party for life enjoys more support in that area, but there is some competition. Actually, those parties who declare their pro-European course, they really enjoy very big support, and this kind of competition actually increases the closer we move to the election campaign. I would like to thank everybody who participated in our discussion, that you found the time in your busy schedule. But a few minutes for the end remarks. You know, I would like to thank you. I heard a lot. I saw a lot. I saw a lot of familiar faces. Well, I actually responded to this boom of the activities. What they are doing, this is something fantastic, and this is a great breakthrough, not only for Donbass but for Ukraine as a whole. And the people who do something like you do on the basis of university, those are the social hubs which require a lot. This is really progress. Those people who come to some project, they do not know what to do first, but they are prepared to do that, and it's very hard to overvalue their contribution. One more thing which I would like to say. Oksana mentioned ideology in Donbass. My granny, once she participated in election and she was looking for the communists, to vote for. That was an ideology. Now, there is no ideology, there is populism, and many people use that, and they say that there is a factory, it belonged to Russia first, maybe we can restore that, and in this way to restore connections with Russia. The people change their minds, they change their mentality. This is a shift which have never been the case before, and there is a lot of I believe that European Donbass is good, but European Ukraine is still better. We are going to continue to talk about that, and this is the kind of formation which our people are striving for, and they are worth to have that. When you listen to the Russian radio Mayak beacon, let's say, and nothing else, but they do not have the Ukrainian broadcast after 9 o'clock in the morning. This is something wrong with that. So we have to work more on this, and we hope that the local authorities in the end of the day will hear what we are saying, and this is true in the context of elections. Thank you very much. Anybody else would like to come up with some end remarks? If not, thank you very much indeed. I would like to appreciate the input of everybody who actually participated in our discussion. I would like to thank our speakers. I understand those who are distanciated from us physically, and it was not very easy for them to follow what we were talking about. And in the end, I would like to thank and appreciate the hospitality of this UCMC center. Thank you.